Big game at the Coliseum this Saturday. Revenge game for USC from that heartbreaker in Ann Arbor last year. We have Trevor with us to help break down the Wolverines. Your calls, all the information we give you in an hour, coming up next. Well, welcome in, guys. We have another Conquest Call-In Show. We know that USC is going to be welcoming in the Michigan Wolverines this weekend at the Coliseum. Usually it's just myself and Jamal here taking your phone calls, but this week we have a special guest, Trevor. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out here. Trevor covers the Wolverines for what outfit are you with it again, Trevor?
On 3.
For On 3. So a lot of familiar faces out there. Michigan fans would know Trevor, but for you Trojan fans, we are going to give you guys the next hour. If you guys have questions about USC, about Michigan, or this matchup, let us know. Jamal, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Timbo Slice. Always a pleasure. Super fun. And Trevor, so great to have you on again. We had you on last year, and it was such a delight and so informative. So thrilled to have you back.
Yeah, appreciate it. Always excited to come on and talk ball with the opponents.
Oh, don't worry. You have some friendly faces. We got our first Michigan fan in the crowd. Trojan fans, where are you? We're already. It started to look like it's someone already sold our tickets to our chat. I mean, let alone the Coliseum. You guys got. We got
how the stadium. That's how the stadium's going to go too, boys. So
this is a great game though, because we've seen lots of great SC UCLA Michigan matchups in the Rose Bowl over the years. I mean, I was at that game with Navarre. Just seemed like it was really kind of that guy, USC's defensive line and linebackers. I hope that we can get all over your backfield like we did in that game. But do you have any memories of SC, Trevor, SC games, Michigan in the past that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, obviously last year's was just really cool. I mean, one of the nice things about this Big Ten expansion is having a blue blood and a brand like USC play in Michigan Stadium. And obviously now this year we're going to have Michigan playing in the Coliseum. I think that's great for college football fans. The less, filler games, the better. But yeah, unfortunately, I think about those 2000s, the Rose Bowl, not a lot of good memories for me, unfortunately, when it comes as a Michigan fan. So yeah, last year, Kalel Mauling's putting his team on his back to pull out a victory. Probably my best memory for Michigan USC that comes off the top of my mind.
Yeah, that was I was there. I was there on the field taking pictures, and I thought when Jacoby Lane caught that touchdown, just all the air went out of the big house. I mean, it just went because about 2 minutes left, and Alex Orji not showing any signs of life of getting the vertical passing game. It looked like it might be a lot for the Wolverines to handle. With just 2 minutes left, I didn't think I'd ever see the day, but I saw some Wolverine fans heading for the down the aisles, which was pretty amazing. I'm wondering in this game, how many Wolverine fans are going to be out here? For instance, I'll just tell you this, Trevor. My dad and mom are both from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And my dad came, he got a partial scholarship to Notre Dame. Thank God, because otherwise I would have grown up in Indiana. No offense, Indiana. But he got a full ride to USC. And he came out here and he told my mom, who was his new wife, he's like, I'm not going back. So if you we're staying here in California, and I know from friends and family members, there are a lot of transplants here in Southern California. So the Coliseum is going to have maize and blue all over the place. And I made a joke on another podcast after USC lost that game to the Illini last 2 weeks ago. I just thought in my head, I saw just 10,000 tickets go on StubHub all of a sudden. And I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong because Michigan does have the ability to pack the Coliseum, and the Michigan Wolverines do travel pretty well.
Yeah, you've got 3 things you just brought. Michigan does travel really well, and people have already been talking about as soon as, hey, USC to the Big Ten was announced, everybody's like, hey, I'm going to the game at USC, right? Like, I'm going to Washington. I want to, these stadiums, these bucket list trips. But also to your point, there are a lot of Michigan transplants that live in California and Michigan alumni too. There's about 50,000 Michigan alumni in Los Angeles. So that's not even including like just Michigan fans that ended up in California, like actual alumni. And then with the folks that can travel, I think there's going to be a good showing. That said, it's still a huge stadium at night. Like, it's going to be a tough road environment for Michigan. regardless of the amount of Michigan fans that are there. It's still going to be a tough environment.
Jamal, did you make it out last year to the big house? Because like you just said, being all my cousins, uncles, aunts, my grandparents from Michigan. As soon as I heard we were going to the Big Ten, it was the big house. I mean, I've been to the shoe, but going to the big house, I was like, I'm going.
Tim, same. It was a bucket list item for me. I'd never been there before, and have some friends out there, based in Michigan who were California transplants over there. So it was absolutely iconic. What a special experience that was, and hoping to do it again, in a couple of years here as well. But man, that's an iconic setting, and I think when you close your eyes and you think, the Rose Bowl, when I close my eyes, I think of Michigan and USC. I don't think of Ohio State. I don't think of other schools. I think of the pageantry of these two schools, the colors. And Michigan USC is just very, very special. And to see Michigan at the Collie, hasn't happened in, 4 or 5 decades. So it's going to be a really special moment there on Saturday. And Trevor, to your point, 50,000 Michigan alum, people don't realize there's a huge aerospace community in Los Angeles, big aerospace industry. There are a ton of Michigan alumni that work in aerospace in LA. So I expect a really big showing from the Michigan faithful Saturday evening.
Yeah, got a few business folks out there as well. I mean, we're literally building a campus building in Los Angeles for Ross Business, and the business some lawyers
I
too.
see those billboards. All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not your favorite folks, but a lot of Michigan lawyers out there too. So
almost 60 years. 1957 was
60 years. 60 years. Jeez.
Yeah. The last time that Michigan came out, and I think the only time. Hold on, let me take a look. And the only time they've been to the Coliseum, they came with a victory, 16-6. USC in recent history, at least in my lifetime, has had that just that touch. In my lifetime, USC just got the win more often than not, losing in '88, and then again we talked about last year. But they had a string. USC until last year had won 6 out of last 7, going all the way back to 1969. All of those being in the Rose Bowl game. So this would be this would bring it back. USC has a slight edge in the series right now. USC leads the all-time series 6-5. So with the victory, Wolverines could finally get that one. One of my favorite things to say, Trevor, is that nobody in the Big Ten, till Maryland, but I don't count Maryland. Maryland is like a one-off, and they got some crazy game. But realistically, of the original Big Ten, there's not one school in the original Big Ten that has a winning record against USC. This would tie it up 6-6 in the all-time series. But let's forget about all that. This game is big for both teams because let's face it, both teams have one loss. You guys lost to Oklahoma earlier in the season. SC coming off that last-minute field goal loss to Illinois 2 weeks ago. Having that second loss this early with the games we just talked about, you guys still having to play Ohio State, USC still looking at Notre Dame, a game up in Eugene against Oregon. You still have Iowa here at home. Possibly, if we lose this game, could be some trouble for us. How much does this game mean on the schedule for Michigan, Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, the season's really divided up nicely for Michigan, where they had these first 4 games, including the tough road game against Oklahoma, like you mentioned, and then a conference road opener against Nebraska. And the idea kind of was, or at least expectation around Ann Arbor for most folks was, hey, if you can go 3-1 and see positive signs from the offense, some development from Bryce, hopefully not too many freshman mistakes, and you get to that bye 3-1, then playoff aspirations are still alive, potentially Big Ten. You lose to Oklahoma, which in a lot of ways, especially with this new format, really doesn't hurt you, right? Oklahoma now looks like the best defense in the country. They've got a brutal SEC schedule. We'll have to see, could go a long way beating Texas this weekend, right? But that loss continues to look better, and you win the Big Ten opener. So this game now, if you continue to stay undefeated in the Big Ten, and look, Washington coming to Michigan, you feel like you have an advantage with the travel, right? But that's still potentially a tough slate. Michigan State always finds a way to kind of play up to Michigan just because of the rivalry there. But yeah, obviously Ohio State circled at the end, and you'd love to get to that game with the Buckeyes with only 1 loss, because if you're there with 2, now you can't drop a trap game, and obviously your playoff dreams potentially end with a loss to the Buckeyes, which would be a rough year for Michigan fans to have to listen to that. So it's crucial, I think, for the projection of the rest of the year, and honestly for both programs too, short and long term, in terms of narrative.
Yeah, Trevor, I think you said it best there, laying out the expectations for Michigan. Obviously for SC, this feels like a very pivotal game. We've called it perhaps the most important game of the Lincoln Riley era at USC here in year 4, because you win this game, you restabilize, and you have the opportunity now to improve from the last 2 years and make a run at a college football playoff bid. Those big 2 road games at Notre Dame, at Oregon are the ones we got circled, but you're moving forward. If you drop this game, this would now be a 3rd consecutive year where you've got a losing streak, and staring at 4-2 with those 2 road games. Now you're potentially staring at an 8-4 season, which after the previous 2 years would really be catastrophic for the momentum of the Lincoln Riley era. And I would imagine in a similar case with Sharon Moore, after, a rough last season, rebuild, you don't want to get 2 of those together, particularly after, taking over for Harbaugh and the chatter getting louder. So we're both sort of in a similar boat here. Feels like the Big Ten's going to get 4 into the playoff. It's shaking out that way a bit. You got Ohio State, you got Oregon, you got Indiana, and now it feels like the winner of this game could be in that 4th slot, sort of going into the teeth of October and November. Trevor, I got to start with asking you just Bryce Underwood, and how you are seeing the development of Underwood. We've watched him for a few games. Certainly undeniable talent there from a true freshman, but feels like everything's kind of a fastball. It sort of reminds you of a young Elway. There isn't a lot of touch to his ball. What are some things that you've liked to start, and where are maybe the biggest gaps that you're seeing in his game right now?
Yeah, I think, on that note, the fastball, he's got the worst drop rate in the Power 4 right now. And when you talk about not having the touch on the ball, if receivers are catching a lot of these balls, we're probably not having that conversation, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. They've played around with the receivers, and we can get into that in a little bit. But all the talk of Bryce coming in the year, and the reason why I felt he was going to start from day one, regardless, Mikey Keene ends up being hurt all off season, so there's really no true competition. But the reason we felt he was going to start from the beginning is, so often with a freshman quarterback, it's like, well, he's got to get up to speed with the college game and learn the playbook, or physically he's not there yet. And none of those things are true with Bryce. Like, when you see him in person, it's incredible. He's 6'5", 240, and he just sticks out on the field. He looks like a senior. He doesn't look like a freshman. And whether it was coaches or players consistently all offseason just talking about his work ethic, his IQ, we had Donovan McCulley, who's wide receiver 1, 5th-year senior, in the summer, was talking about he missed a 6 a.m. workout, and Bryce was on him and how bad he felt. And, Bryce really held him accountable. I'm like, this is a 5th-year senior talking about a freshman holding him accountable, right? So he doesn't have a captaincy on his jersey, but he's clearly the leader of this team already. He carries himself incredibly. That's off the field. On the field, each week we've seen him do a better job of processing, going through reads. You can clearly tell from day one, he had control of the offense. All of that looks good, but it's really the rest of the team. The offensive line hasn't necessarily always provided him with the protection he needed. The run game has been explosive, but not necessarily consistent to have nice, long, efficient drives. And like I said, the receivers between Channing Goodwin and Samaj Morgan, there's been some drop issues. Post-bye week, they've made some changes. And again, we'll get into that potentially could be advantageous for Bryce. But yeah, I think maybe some touch on those quick short routes. But if you look at the throws he's made with some of those 50-50s, a lot of it's just had to do with trusting the receivers. And now Donovan McCulley took a step last week, and Andrew Marsh seems to emerge as the freshman in that wide receiver 2 role. And that could really change Bryce's comfort level back there.
Yeah, there's talk about Sharon Moore was talking about how Andrew Marsh is going to take over that slot start. Is that correct? The slot position?
Not necessarily. It's more of, initially we thought the Z role, right? Okay. So Channing Goodwin, redshirt freshman, started the year there, And this sounds dumb, but like Shannon Goodwin is an excellent wide receiver. He's a great blocker. He's a great route runner. He does everything great for a wide receiver except for catch the ball, which is pretty essential, right? So going into the bye week, there was kind of some open competition there, and Marsh, as a freshman, was able to make up some ground from the playbook standpoint and some of those things you see with a freshman. But he's clearly got the higher ceiling on the outside. He can go get 50-50 balls, nice long stride, quick yards after the catch. What you could see, though, in that slot perspective, another receiver emerged this week, another freshman, Jamar Browder, who's a 6'6", 200-something pound huge receiver. So you could see him lining up at X, McCulley moving X to Z. Now you've got 2 6'5" guys that can go get 50-50 balls, and Marsh moves into the slot. That's a lot of inexperience with 2 freshmen, but in terms of playmakers and maybe guys Bryce feels comfortable trusting to go make plays, if Browder's ready, then you could see Marsh in the slot, and that's probably an ideal situation for Michigan. Excuse me.
Well, I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, and actually in the beginning of the year when I was picking this game, I said this. I feel if USC, and this might be a big ask, the way we saw Illinois offensive line handle our defensive line. Let's see if that was just an anomaly last week. But I would say if we could hold you guys under 200 yards rushing, I know it's a big number, but believe me, I'm building in the fact that I just don't see a situation where Bryce Underwood's going to torch us for 275 or 300 yards. So I'm building that in as well. I guess we would have to just to take a minute. We do have to talk about Justice Hayes, who is just having a great season, just running the ball. He's among the leaders, I believe, in yards per carry and total yards so far this year, correct? Tell us a little bit about his running style and what we can look for on Saturday.
Yeah, when Haynes first committed to Michigan, I was kind of interested on this narrative that like he didn't really produce at Alabama, and that why was he even leaving Bama, or why didn't they use him enough? His numbers seemed low. And I'm watching the tape and I'm seeing a guy who has good lateral cuts, good vision. He's physical. He'll knock a linebacker over. He's good in the short yardage goal line. He's good in the passing game, and he's got home run ability. And Bama, frankly, just ran Jalen Milroe too much, in my opinion. And they obviously had Jam Miller ahead of him as well. So what Michigan landed was a third-year player in his peak season, a former #1 running back recruit who spent 2 years at a top SEC program developing, learning, playing tough competition without getting a lot of tread on his tires. So I was really hyping him all offseason. That said, I don't know where he found it. He got another gear. He was very Corum-esque, where it felt like he was always going to get those couple extra yards and he could burst for 20, 30, 40, but somebody was going to eventually catch him. And what we've seen this year is he doesn't just have that quick burst. He also has that top end speed, and he's outrunning DBs and getting these 75-yard touchdowns. So he really is a complete all around back, and pairs well with Jordan Marshall, who we thought was going to be kind of a 1A, 1B and could be if needed. But Haynes has just been the hot hand, and you'd be crazy not to give him 15, 20, 25 carries, whatever the game, plan demands.
Yeah, no, makes sense, Trevor. And, flipping the conversation a little bit to the other side of the ball, can't go too far having a conversation about Michigan football without talking about the front four and the front seven. Seen some really interesting things from Michigan at the start of the year. Barham feels like an absolute stud and a freak, kind of the next one at Michigan. And you got Derek Moore, and particularly there's a lot of utilization on the left side of the edge, which is, particularly got, SC fans and us kind of the antennas up, especially with the questionable status of Elijah Page going into the game on Saturday. But maybe you can talk a little bit about Barham, Moore, and who the other sort of studs that you see in that Michigan front are, and how does this Michigan front maybe compare to some of the great fronts of years past, and how much, if at all, Michigan needs to utilize the blitz to be able to get home?
Yeah, how much they need to or not really doesn't matter. Wink will be blitzing, right?
Yeah,
there's going to be blitzing. That's going to happen no matter what. Now, he does a lot of things disguising coverages that I know some folks talk about as if it's this super fancy thing, and it's really not. And it's not going to be that unfamiliar to USC fans as well, because Lynn obviously got his big start being hired by Wink at Baltimore. Right. There's going to be a lot of parallels there. I'm interested to see how that plays out as well, kind of a mentor-mentee situation there. But anyway, Jayshawn Barham originally comes to Michigan as a Mike linebacker from Maryland. I called him last year kind of harshly a cold-seeking missile, where he was going in fast, but you didn't necessarily know what he was going towards, right? If the ball carrier happened to be there, then great. But asking him to read and react to plays or drop back into coverage, he was getting exposed a lot there. And frankly, the entire defense, Wink was just asking too much of these guys, trying to bring NFL terminology and scheme in. That's really a big change you saw in the back half with some simplification, if you will. Barham, in the offseason, a lot of talk about him moving to edge, but then it kind of doesn't happen. And then that Central Michigan game, they finally move him to edge. TJ Guy, the original weak side starter, doesn't play, and Barham explodes. And now we're talking about him as a potential first-round talent because you can line him up, and he doesn't have to think about 20 different things, right? Either set the edge in the run game or go get the quarterback. And he's doing a good job at both of those. This defensive front still as good as Barham has been, and the domino effect that it's had. Derek Moore's playing better because of the attention on Jayshawn Barham, Rayshon Benny, Trey Pierce. There's a rotation of about 5 guys at defensive tackle, also playing better because you've just increased the level of play. There's no Mason Graham. There's no Kenneth Grant. There's no Aiden Hutchinson, right? Which leads me to, I think you brought up past defensive fronts. 21, Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo. Hutchinson breaks the sack record at Michigan. Ojabo's right there. They both leave. What in the world are they going to do? And they have this committee approach, more depth in 2022. Mike Morris led the team with only 7.5 sacks, but as a team, they had more sacks than they did in 2021. And I think this is probably pretty comparable, maybe even to 23 or even 24 last year, where Josiah Stewart was kind of the guy. Maybe Barham can be the guy moving forward. But this is about a defensive front that's 10 deep and rotates and not necessarily about 1 or 2 guys, even though Barham and Moore could potentially be there. I think it's more about that rotation and staying fresh late in the games, which was kind of a staple for Michigan during that 3-year run.
Well, you brought up the point with Lynn and Wink Martindale. It likes to blitz, so does Lynn. As far as look at the development, as well, early, right? Being young, being just being a true freshman. How has Underwood, in your opinion, made the jump to reading? Because there were questions last year about Jaden Mayava and how well he was reading defenses. What is your overall analysis? How quickly the college game's coming to a young true freshman? I mean, at least Mayava had some experience in playing in FBS football. How is that process coming? Pre-snap and him going through his to his different receivers.
I mean, if you compare last week to week 1, it's almost night and day, right? He was making no pre-snap calls, no adjustments at the line, was very locked in on his first read, which I constantly tell folks that's not necessarily a bad thing. College football OCs will tell you they want their quarterback to throw to the first read because the first read should be open, and that means the ball is getting out quickly, right? But he was very locked in on the first player. And then they kind of introduced some levels, right? Where one guy's in the flat, one's running an out route. So his second read is directly over top the first, things like that to enhance. Now you're seeing him at the line, making some calls, some audibles. He's going through 3-4 stages of progressions as he adapts. And the big storyline too is he's running when necessary, right? There was kind of a leash put on him the first couple games. And look, I don't know if Sharon Moore had the revelation on his own. I don't know if Biff Poggi was like, hey man, and somebody convinced him, but we saw a couple designed runs and saw him have a little bit of freedom to run. And I think that's really allowed him to play more loose, where he's not thinking too much and he can kind of just go out there and do his thing. He's been fantastic on the run and moving when the pocket's moving. That's something they kind of had to do to adapt to some of the O-line issues they've had. But that said, I think he's shown some signs of being better in the pocket. And at the end of the day, that's what Michigan would like to see, is some more true pocket passing from Bryce Underwood. Because as much as he's a dual threat quarterback because he can run, he's not Vince Young. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's a lot closer to a Josh Allen.
Yeah, makes sense, Trevor. That's a really good point, in terms of kind of the willingness to run and where that instinct kind of comes from. Trevor, I want to talk a little bit about secondary because SC, Makai Lemon comes to town, perhaps a healthy Jacoby Lane comes to town, and, the litany of weapons on the outside for the Trojans. You guys lose Will Johnson, obviously, last year, but what I've seen is a very versatile secondary, between, you got Metcalf, you got Hillman, you got some guys here that seem to play very versatile roles, really good in terms of kind of crashing down and stopping the run and getting in the box, really good side to side, rarely lose gap integrity, hard to misdirect this unit. What have you seen from the secondary these first few games, and what do you think Lemon and Lane are potentially gonna change in terms of that strategy, and how are they gonna strain that secondary?
I don't know that you needed me on, dude. You just nailed it. Like it's so true. The buzzword for the last couple of years has been versatile. We saw it a little bit with Steve Klinkscale before he left, and then obviously Lamar Morgan, who's been the defensive back coach for the last 2 years. Everyone that comes into this program gets reps at nickel. Before they figure out, hey, are you a safety, are you corner, they play at nickel. Throughout the spring, we were joking, we didn't really know who the nickel back was going to be because like 9 guys were playing there. And part of the reason they do that is because now if I'm lining up on the field or the boundary or safety or nickel, whatever, I've played all these spots. I know what my other guy's thinking. I know what he's going to do because I know his role, right? And nickel is such a tough spot in this defense. So once you learn that, I feel a lot better about putting you on the outside, right? So to your point, TJ Metcalf, though, has primarily been that nickel player, but he's a guy that can drop back into playing strong safety. He's a guy that can get in the box and, affect the run game. Jair Hill, your outside corner, can play some nickel. Zeke Berry is a former nickel playing the other corner spot. He was hurt for a little bit, though, so Jaden Sanders, another freshman, really stepped up the first few weeks. He's a guy that he's going to keep everything in front of him, right? You're not going to see a lot of tight press from him, but he's not going to allow a lot of big explosive plays. Where Zeke Berry is a guy that can make a play on the ball, get some pass deflections, but maybe he gets burned on a double move. It's going to be interesting to see how they use Sanders and Berry in this game against, a really, really good wide receiver group. I can't help but think about the Ohio State games for the last 4 years, though, and these elite wide receivers that come in, and the Michigan defense. Granted, Wink isn't Jesse Minter; they're not the same, but so much has been, look, we're going to let you go between the 20s. You're going to get your yards. I'm not going to shut Lemon down. It's not going to happen, right? If I can prevent him from getting the big play touchdowns, that's where the game changer comes in. So you'll probably see some high safety. Rod Moore being back and healthy, I think is massive for this game. Brandon Hillman's a hit stick waiting to happen. But in terms of that secondary coverage, I think Rod Moore brings a whole nother element. So yeah, it's going to be interesting that it's not an elite secondary. Again, we just talked about with the defensive front. There's no Will Johnson, right? As good as Jair Hill, has been at forcing incompletions, and Zeke Berry's made plays, and Sanders, you're going to get yours in this game. It's just going to be like how many of those get in the end zone and maybe make, because if this turns into a shootout, Michigan's not going to win, right? So they have to try and keep these guys making their plays between the 20s and maybe holding them to field goals.
It's going to be interesting which team can impose their will on the pace of this game. I mean, it did appear that happened last year, and just simply, I think a big part of that was the fact that USC did not have a lot of size in the interior defensive line, and Michigan was able to dictate the way the game was going to go. We saw that first half went, but then it did appear in the second half of that game that really Lynn came out in the third quarter and just shut down. Now, it was probably the first, a big part of it was there was not a lot of film on Alex Orji and on the offense. That was really the first time you guys kind of unleashed him on the world. And you guys were able to get a lot of yards in that first half. I mean, over 200 yards, I think, on the ground in the first half. But then some adjustments were made in the second half. And really, I think actually it was Danton Lynn who gave the rest of college football, the rest of the season, kind of the playbook to kind of slow down that rushing attack that you guys had going. My question to you, though, is what do you think? Looking at have you seen any USC's defense this year? And if you specifically watched the Illinois game last year, USC, there were some combo blocks, but there were a lot of one-on-ones that were lost physically. in that. How do you see this game shaking out? And by the way, one thing people talk about is the differences in like the stats. If you guys will remember though, if you have a team whose offense is controlling the ball, eating clock, like Michigan likes to do, your defense will also be on the field a lot less. But I did notice one big stat that's nice to see. If you're a Wolverine fan, and worrisome if you're a Trojan fan, you guys are, I believe, in the top 10 in yards per carry, rushing the ball at just a little, I think it's actually 2.5 yards per carry. USC is a full yard better than they were last year, but a full yard worse than you guys at 3.5 a carry. What do you think the game's going to be like early on? Because I honestly think, and this is what I wanted to happen against Illinois, USC needs to jump out to an early lead for many reasons. One, crowd. That's huge. Two, USC has to dictate the way this game's going. I think the way to win this game is to make Bryce, a young quarterback, win this thing with his arm. Maybe even if you have to go heavy box, put some guys on the outside and some one-on-ones and just, hope that USC is able to win more of those and not have any busted coverage like we've had. But how do you see this game going early? And what do you think that Sherrone Moore wants to do in this game?
Yeah. It's hard for me to not get deja vu when you say that. Like, I know this isn't the same team as 2023, obviously, but every opponent Michigan has faced since 2021 has said, hey, we're going to load the box and make you throw the ball. Like that's consistently what people say. Hey, that's what our game plan is going to be. And Michigan is not scared to run into 8 or 9 man boxes. And maybe, and Michigan fans do this. We have these frustrating first halves, like you saw against Wisconsin, and then maybe a little bit more dominant third, and then they wear them down and win in the fourth. Sherrone Moore learned from Harbaugh. They don't care about winning pretty or points or covering the spread. They just care about winning. And if that means the game has to be ugly, they're going to do it. I agree with you on establishing the lead. That changes the game plan completely. And we've seen Michigan come out often under Wink, and especially in the last couple of weeks, where they're running very vanilla against the script plays from the opponent. And you're able to score, whether it's in Nebraska or Wisconsin's opening drive was actually shockingly impressive, right? And that kind of, even though it was only 7, that really set the pace for the rest of the first half. Versus if Michigan had come out and gotten a 3-and-out stop and then been allowed to do what they want on offense. I still think the key running the ball, that high average yard per carry is great. Absolutely. But there's been a lot of explosive plays, which is a lot different than previous years. When they were averaging 5 yards a carry with Blake Corum, they were literally getting 5 yards a carry, right? You hit him at the 1 or 2 and he's falling forward, and maybe he gets a 10, 15, 20 yarder. But they're literally just the 3 yards and a cloud of dust, and this super efficient offense that for fans that are used to explosive offenses like USC, you think it's not good because it's boring. But when it comes to points per play, points per possession, it could be one of the best in the country. Michigan's not there yet, but I don't know if they need to be. We talked about last year, they had a historically bad offense, 104th or something like that. And arguably, you put Bryce Underwood on the team last year, they're 9-3, 10-2. There was just literally no competent quarterback play. And Alex Orji couldn't hit a simple out route, let alone some of the more complicated throws, right? So now this offense is playing like top 30, and maybe the defense isn't as great as we thought it could be. So there's kind of an interesting balance there. But look, Michigan's going to come out, they're going to try and run the ball, and they're still going to throw it. And I think Bryce will, to your point, 275, if he's throwing for that much, Michigan was probably behind a lot. But he could, if he's in that 220, 225 range and doesn't make a really bad turnover, which he hasn't made so far this year. He had a bad throw against Central that was stupid, but they were up a ton. I'm talking about in the red zone or late in the half, something like that, a game-changing turnover. He hasn't done that yet. So if he can avoid the costly mistakes, I think they're just going to try and they're going to pound the rock, and it might be frustrating at times, but it's probably going to pay off at some point, whether it's with a couple big explosives or late in the game where they run out the clock up by a few points.
Trevor, let me ask you this. It's this sort of contrast to styles, to Tim's point, no question about it. And whoever can kind of impose, their will, particularly in that first quarter, is going to sort of set the tone. Is this going to be a game that, SC wants to get into the mid to high 30s? Is this going to be a game in the low 20s, maybe even high teens? And so much of how that first quarter goes is going to set that tone. Let me ask you this. what is one matchup that you feel the best about from a Michigan perspective in terms of an advantage? And then what is one matchup that you feel the worst about in terms of this is where SC has a decided advantage?
Yeah, I think we've probably already talked about it, right? USC's passing game, a quarterback that can not only beat you with the arm, but scramble out a little bit. And Wink, the concern is going to be if they start making plays in the passing game, Wink's gut reaction is to blitz more, right? Because I'm a big fan of pressures are more important than sacks. I know sacks can kill drives, but pressures lower a quarterback's completion rating 10 to 15%, raise turnover worthy plays 3%, potential interceptions, right? So as long as you're getting pressure, that's impacting the game enough, you get enough couple sacks that can clinch the drive. If they're not getting pressure and giving up yards, Wink's going to start doing some cover zero stuff. He's going to start sending 6 or 7 guys, and that's where you maybe get nervous as a Michigan fan. So USC's ability to throw the ball early, and again, as good as the secondary is and versatile, we've seen them be susceptible to passing this year and last year against bigger game opponents, right? I do think Michigan's going to be able to run the football. Now, is it going to be explosives mixed with some of these short yardage, or can they get that on schedule 10 to 12 play drives and then get to the red zone and score touchdowns, right? Their red zone offense has progressively been getting better, but not as good as those 21 through 23 years. And we've talked about the running hasn't necessarily been as efficient per carry, but overall with the explosives, it's been there. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. If they can't, and not just because, you're making Bryce throw, but just because Michigan doesn't know how to win if they're not running the football, problem. They're not going to stop the USC passing game, but if they can at least slow it down and keep them out of the end zone, you've got a football game. Either one of those things, and Michigan could be in trouble.
Yeah, that's why the fumble in the first drive last week or 2 weeks ago for USC, it's just establishing that early lead on the road is important, but I think also against a young quarterback in a game like this, I think it's going to be really big. Well, you guys, we're going to open up the phone calls right now. If you guys want to join us to show, ask Trevor or Jamal questions, number 888-997-4539. Give us a call. Also, we'll drop the Streamyard link in the chat for you as well if you want to join backstage on the Streamyard link. But we'll be around for a few more minutes if you guys have any more questions. Jamal, any more questions for Trevor on your side?
No, it's a fascinating game, Trevor. Let me ask you this. What's the temperature with Sherrone Moore? It's kind of early, but, it was a wobbly first year. What's sort of the perception and the timeline? With SC, with Riley, it's year 4. Fans are getting, kind of an itchy trigger a little bit if things go south. But I think there's an acknowledgement, just given the state of where kind of the larger university is, he's definitely going to get another year for sure, and then we'll see where it goes. But Sherrone Moore, where do you sort of see him in terms of the barometer and the timeline?
It's such an interesting dynamic situation amongst the fan base because there's a lot of, I'll call it politics for now. In terms of with Michigan, they're happy. Right. There were things that, without getting into it too much, regardless of what you think about Jim Harbaugh and the entire scandal itself, what he left behind was a giant cloud with this NCAA investigation, a understaffed recruiting department, a non-trained recruiting department, and a department that was at odds with not just NCAA compliance, but compliance within the Michigan building. And Sherrone Moore spent a lot of the first year literally restaffing the recruiting department and getting back on track with some basic compliance things and repairing relationships and, implementing new things with NIL and partnerships and just a lot of that behind the scenes stuff. And we saw success with that, right? Flipping Bryce Underwood after, you got to remember, Michigan lost Dante Moore from its own backyard. It lost CJ Carr, the grandson of Lloyd Carr, from its own backyard. And then it lost Bryce Underwood from its own backyard. And without Sherrone Moore, Bryce Underwood's not even at Michigan. Who knows? Maybe it's Miller Moss playing quarterback this year for Michigan, right? So
I remember that rumor.
Yeah.
So that recruiting close was huge. And then obviously they go into the bye week. He basically knows Kurt Campbell's done. The mistake was made on offense, and the team rebuys in. They blow out Northwestern. They beat Ohio State. They beat Bama in the, I don't even remember what, the ReliaQuest Bowl. And all of a sudden it's the best 8-5 season ever. Right. And that really helped fans. But you come into this year now and people have this disdain for the athletic director, Ward Manuel, because they believe he chased Jim Harbaugh out. There is some love for Harbaugh for finally winning the Natty. There's some, frankly, I think, revisionist history. I don't know how many times I see something happen in a Michigan game and they're like, oh, Harbaugh never would have let that happen. I'm like, you guys don't remember. Like, you think every game was a comfortable win or something. It wasn't. A lot of Harbaugh games were frustrating. And it was year 7 before he won a game as an underdog. He was James Franklin before James Franklin was, right? Can't win the big game, can't beat the rivals, right? So Sherrone Moore is not competing against what should be his own realistic expectations as a second-year head coach taking over a program that had issues. He's competing against this mythical version of Jim Harbaugh, right? He's 8-1 since the loss last year to Washington, and big wins over rivals. And yeah, you have the loss to Oklahoma this year. Again, looking like a good team. And fans, it's so funny you talked about this being like a must-win game and like defining for the coach, right? This is the 3rd game for Michigan this year where I feel like we're saying that about both sides. Oklahoma, man, if this is going to be big for Sherrone Moore if they don't win, and there was a lot of narrative, and Brent Venables, he's on the hot seat if they don't win it. Nebraska trying to get over this 10-year hump, and is Matt Rule year 3 going to happen? This is such a defining game for Sherrone Moore. He's not even on the sidelines of the Nebraska game, but it's apparently going to define his entire career here. And he wins, and it's still not enough, right? So I think a loss, there's people that want to be right about Sherrone Moore being wrong. And there's that pulse that exists within the fan base. Realistically, he's going to get another year for sure. But I think there's a big difference between obviously 10-2 in the playoff, 9-3, barely miss, and possibly an ugly 8-4 year. 8-4 and maybe not looking like a playoff contender at the end of the year, and he's on the hot seat next year. 9-3, barely miss out, or ideally 10-2, beat Ohio State and get in. And okay, you've got your freedom to go, but I don't think Michigan's looking to make a quick move, but amongst the fan base, they're ready to pounce on Sherrone every week, it feels like.
Yeah, when I think about the whole Harbaugh, anyone says that Harbaugh would still be there, etc. He didn't accomplish everything that he did for the
Harbaugh would have been fired.
Well, at some point.
If Harbaugh was, no. Like when this investigation ended, Michigan would have had no choice but to fire him. He was gone and was able to, I mean, the show cause doesn't really mean anything because he doesn't care. But if he was still with the program, look at the difference between a Tennessee and Ole Miss, what they do when the coach is gone versus when they're here. Jim Harbaugh wanted that in his contract extension, essentially full immunity. And Michigan didn't give it to them because they knew what came down from the NCAA. Jim Harbaugh would have gotten fired for that. He would have been suspended last year, this year, who knows? It would have been ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a fact.
But okay, so yeah, I'm gonna skip beyond that. But he's also just on that same narrative that like Pete Carroll. People thought that Pete Carroll was going to be around for. There's certain guys like a Harbaugh, like a Pete Carroll. They want to win at the highest level. We want them to be Trojans. We want them. Jim's a Michigan man, but the NFL is the highest level, and especially the way Jim Harbaugh lost. That Thanksgiving dinner with his brother John every Thanksgiving. He wants to get that taste out of his mouth. There's no doubt about that. And it's like Pete wanted to go and show everyone that whatever the Patriots Pete was, you want to clown me. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show you. And I think both just have that.
Yeah,
there's those alpha guys, that itch. But you're very right. I don't think that he would be on the sidelines this year or last year if he had stayed. That's a very obvious point. Well, this is really crazy. I'm going to have to check the phone lines because we literally do not have any callers tonight, which is great, which is fine, actually, Trevor, because I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. No offense, callers, but it's really great to have you come in and kind of give us a skinny on the program. I think also, I really would love to have seen is I think, Underwood's going to be great. I keep telling people this. I'm not really, he's young, so I'm not sold. I'm not trembling, but I'm really glad this is, in the middle of the year. And I'm sure Oklahoma is probably happy they're not facing Underwood in game 10 or 11 at the end of the season. Yeah, we're talking to you over there in Columbus. He's going to be a lot more difficult to handle at the end of the year. But I guess, so is Mateer under Arbuckle. I mean, I know they were at Washington State, but that offense, and he gets his hand healthy, can do some damage. But that was a great game. I'm interested to see what this defense can do. Again, if we can make you guys one-dimensional, if we could do it. If they can do it, then I really feel that USC's got a huge advantage in this game. It's getting to that time where let's just go ahead around the table here and let's take some good old-fashioned predictions with some scores and maybe just a one-liner on how that's going to get done. Go ahead, Trevor. You're the guest. You can go first. Sorry.
I'm honestly still torn. I told somebody today I might end up having to flip a coin at the end of this deal. I keep seeing 30-27 in my mind, and I don't know which team it's going to be on the winning end. And it could be as simple as who's the last with the ball. We saw, like you said, to your point, when Michigan needed to, Kalel Mullings. I mean, I don't think people realize his run against USC and his run against Ohio State. If both of those don't happen, Michigan's 5-7 last year and not playing in a bowl game. So like that game was crazy close, but I think it's going to be a close game. I could see either way, though. I'm with you. This could be 17-14 or something crazy like that. I wouldn't be terribly shocked either, but I think it's going to be 30-27, and I'm not really 100% sure who's going to win it. It's going to be what we talked about. If Bryce makes a crucial mistake, Michigan's going to struggle to recover. Their special teams have not been good this year. We saw in the Rose Bowl against Bama a couple, a muff punt, 2 muff punts actually. Something like that could really, really flip this game. In terms of making them one-dimensional, I don't know if it'll matter. Michigan ran the ball 30 straight times against Penn State in 2023. Like that one dimension, even if you make them one-dimensional, it's still pretty good. They were arguably one-dimensional last year. They couldn't throw the ball. They could. So they're already ahead of that from last year. The offensive line is better. The quarterback's obviously better. The receivers are playing better. But Justice Haynes being contained, and I don't think Bryce can throw for 350 yards and win the football game.
Jamal?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I got SC 23-20. I think it's going to be an interesting game. Here's the interesting stat, and I don't have the stat on me sort of offhand. I haven't calculated it, but it feels like SC might be number 1 in the country in terms of yards per possession. It just feels like there have been a ton of long drives. And, there's been games where SC has had, 500 yards of offense, and you look up, end of the third quarter, and they're sitting, on 38 points. And you're like, how does that sort of check out? So I actually kind of see that trend continuing a bit. I think Michigan, the punt game, they're going to try and pin SC deep a lot of long fields. I think SC is going to kick some field goals. There might be a turnover. So I think SC is going to get a lot of yards, Trevor, to your point, kind of in between the 20s. I think Michigan will tighten more often than not in the red zone, but SC is going to get theirs as well. And then I think on the flip side, I think SC's ability to make the drives longer, even if they can't necessarily stop the run game, but where there's enough resistance there where these are now 14, 16 type play drives, I think you're just going to have fewer number of possessions. And I think ultimately SC is going to do enough defensively to kind of build some resistance there in that run game and prevail 23-20.
Yeah, I'm walking mine back a little bit because a lot of the guys I was hoping for a little clearer picture on the health and some things I've heard and some things that have been said in the press scrums as well, and things that we've seen make me a bit nervous about SC playing at 100%. So I've brought it back a little bit, and that's why I'm leaving this one up here. That's mine, 30-24. I do think that USC does get a late touchdown. This time we end with USC's defense on the field and actually getting a stop. I think USC has been waiting for that for a while, setting up the dramatic moment where USC takes that lead and their defense needs to get that stop. And I think USC wins this one 30-24 because I think on both sides there's just too much firepower. I really don't. I like both defenses, but I don't think either defense has been challenged the way it's going to be challenged on Saturday. And so that's why I do see some more points coming from this game. But like you said, Trevor, this could be a dirty 17-13 game. And if it's that, if it's that kind of game, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have to say it's probably Michigan coming up with the victory if it's that kind of game. But if it gets into the 20s, or if one team gets to 30, and I almost want to say this, I think Michigan needs 30 points to win this game. That's a better way of me also saying what I'm saying.
And to not necessarily push back, but maybe build off of what you just said. When Michigan scores above 30 and their opponent scores under, I mean, obviously when they score more, but that number of 30 has been unbelievably significant. The only game Michigan has lost in this now into 5th year spread was the TCU. Yeah. So if Michigan scores 30, they win. That's just been the MO for a very long time. And I know Harbaugh's gone and it's a different defense, whatever, but enough of the way they play and the way they want to win is the same. So if you keep Michigan under 30, you're feeling a lot better about the game.
Yeah. It's going to be,
which sounds funny because you're thinking with your offense, right, that, if it gets into the 30s or whatever, it's high scoring, that's advantageous for you, but it just hasn't played out that way in years past. But it'll be interesting. This is a complete, I don't know what the right word is, but I mean, having the Oklahoma game, having the Nebraska game, night game, Oklahoma, tough road conference opponent, Nebraska, I think helps Michigan a little bit in what would otherwise be a shocking environment in previous years, because they're playing Hawaii, UConn, a lot of nobodies before they start to get into the middle or late part of the schedule. So I don't know if that impact will be as significant. They're traveling a day earlier, hanging out at the Chargers facility. I don't know, but I mean, you can't ignore that either, that the Big Ten Eastern opponents against the Pac-12 and traveling West have been abysmal.
I think, it just appears that's what it's been for the majority of the Big Ten schools coming out West, just historically. Yeah. UCLA, even not even just the Big Ten, like, LSU, just teams just historically coming out to the West Coast, coming out to California. It just seems like that it has been an issue. And hey, listen, we're not one to talk because outside of UCLA, we still haven't won a game on the road in the Big Ten. So that's a whole nother conversation for
we got Purdue,
day.
Tim. We got Purdue.
Sorry. Sorry.
We got Purdue.
Hoagie, if you're out there, sorry, forgive me wherever you are. But Purdue's in the Big Ten. I don't forget. I forget about this guy.
They've expanded
the big drum, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. They've expanded one of their end zones in recent years, which has helped, because I'll tell you, you're having this like unbelievable experience going to the Big House, and we'll have the same thing going to the Coliseum. You go to Purdue and you're like, this is a Big Ten stadium? Like, what? So yeah, it's funny. It's gonna be interesting to see, as much as the pageantry and tradition of Michigan and USC, the Big House and the Coliseum, USC at Purdue is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, well, they came out. I saw them when I was younger. They came out like early, I think it was late 90s with
late 90s with Breeze.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees came out and they had that scorcher of a game. That might be the hottest SC football game I think I've ever been to. And I've been to, pretty much every home game since the early 90s. So it was, I'm just messing with you, Purdue fan. Not that any of you are out there watching right now, but if you are, and Hogue, if you're out there, I'm very sorry, because I didn't mean to make fun of you guys. But listen, Trevor, it was great having you. Yes. I'm looking forward to this. I knew right away when USC joined the Big Ten. I'm gonna be honest with you, like, I was a diehard Pac-12 guy, and unless you're a Pac-12 guy, you don't realize just like I got up to play Oregon State just for those games, with the Jaquiz Rogers, the Rogers brothers, James Rogers. Those kind of games just killed us. There's that history and pageantry, and I mean, I don't know how long the Big Ten, this iteration, is going to stay. I don't know how long USC is going to be in the Big Ten or whatever is going on. What's the next phase of football is. But one thing I do know is I've always gotten up for, obviously, for my family background, but just, Michigan, it's just a historic blue blood program. It's going to be an all helmet game. I mean, I don't think there's two better helmets. I don't think there are two better helmets in college football, in my opinion. So I'm going to be there on the field with my camera, just happy as it can be. Appreciate you coming in and taking your time. Thank you. A lot of Wolverines in the chat. You guys are always awesome. Love you guys being here. Thank you to our loyal Trojan fans who are here as well. Any final thoughts? Just anything about the USC matchup, the rivalry, anything you want to talk about, Trevor, before you head out?
No, just kind of want to echo what you're saying. I think this is a great thing for college football fans. I think it'll be good too. I know some of us, well, especially with our jobs, we live online a lot, and it's good to remember that's not the real world. And I think there's going to be a lot of friendly new, conversations between USC and Michigan fans because, both fan bases are fortunate to have beautiful stadiums and tradition and uniforms. And I hope there's a lot of respect, and obviously would like Michigan to win, but at the end of the day, this is just going to be a great, great matchup, and it's going to be cool to see.
Jamal?
No question. Here. No, absolutely. Really looking forward to it. And who knows what comes out of this game. I mean, when I think of those 2000 Rose Bowls, Trevor, there's sort of some iconic moments there. USC was the inventor of the Philly special. Somehow it became the Philly special, but that Mike Williams to Matt Leinart was,
oh my gosh,
was a special time.
03,
I don't know what it is about the Philadelphia Eagles kind of stealing all of USC's plays and claiming them, for their own between the Philly special and the tush push. So maybe we give some Eagles fans, a new play on Saturday and invent something new. But looking forward to the pageantry of this game, and coming off of this is a gut check game for USC. Coming off of a bye, coming off of a road loss. Do you nip this in the bud? You had 2 weeks to prepare. Obviously, some injury concerns, but this feels like a pivotal moment in the Lincoln Riley era, and it's fitting that it's coming against Michigan to perhaps exercise some demons from last year. So just cannot wait, and should be ultimate theater and an absolutely great game.
You said it both perfectly. So you guys make sure you're there. If you're in Southern California, wearing your Cardinal and gold, cheering for the Trojans. It's on Saturday. USC is going to take on number 15 Michigan for basically inside track on being that third or fourth team in the hunt to stay in the playoffs for the end of the year. So again, Trevor, thank you so much. You can check Trevor out on 3. What's your site called again as well, Trevor?
Yeah, we're Maize and Blue Review on 3.
Make sure you're checking out Trevor's work there. Thank you, Trevor, so much. Thank you, Jamal, as always. And we'll see everybody on Sunday. Home game. So we'll see you guys on Sunday, bright and early, for hopefully another victory Sunday for the Trojans. Fight on, you guys, and we'll talk to you guys soon.